Welcome back to CrimeSceneX. Today we are covering 3 trick-or-treating horror stories. If you enjoy, then leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe for daily uploads. Sit back and enjoy the video. The Halloween night air was crisp and cold, smelling of decaying leaves and wood smoke. I zipped up my makeshift zombie costume, a collection of torn clothes and fake blood, and set out into the night. My friends, Jake and Mia, were waiting for me at the corner, dressed as a vampire and a witch respectively. We were all seniors in high school, probably too old for trick-or-treating, but we figured it was our last chance to relive childhood memories before college took us our separate ways. We started our journey through the neighborhood, plastic pumpkins in hand, laughing and joking as we went from house to house. The streets were alive with the sounds of children laughing, doors creaking open, and the occasional scream from a nearby haunted house. Everything was so perfectly Halloween. As the night wore on, we ventured to the edge of the neighborhood, where the houses were farther apart and the streetlights fewer. A sense of unease started to settle over me. The festive atmosphere of the main streets was gone, replaced by a quiet stillness that seemed out of place. Mia nudged me. "Let's hit those last few houses and call it a night." We approached a particularly isolated house at the end of a cul-de-sac. The porch light was on, but there were no decorations, no jack-o'-lanterns. Something about it made me feel uneasy, but Jake was already bounding up the path. "Trick or treat!" we chimed in unison as the door creaked open. A man, probably in his 40s, stood in the doorway. There was something off about him. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes, which darted around nervously. "Ah, trick-or-treaters, how delightful," he said, his voice too cheery. He dropped candy into our buckets, but as he did, his hand lingered over mine, his touch cold and clammy. I pulled away quickly, a shiver running down my spine. "Thanks," I mumbled, eager to leave. "Wait," the man said as we turned to go. "I have something special for such grown-up trick-or-treaters. Why don't you come in for a moment?" "No, thank you," Mia said, her voice firm. "We should be getting home." The man's smile faltered for a moment, his eyes narrowing. "It's a special treat just for you. Don't you want to see?" Something in his tone made my heart race. I could see Jake and Mia were also on edge. We backed away slowly. "We really have to go. Thanks, though," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. The man's eyes followed us as we turned and hurried away. We didn't start running until we were out of his sight. "What a creep," Jake said, trying to laugh it off, but I could tell he was shaken too. We decided to take a shortcut through a wooded area to get back to the main street quicker. The trees loomed over us, their branches like gnarled hands reaching out in the dim light. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Then I heard it, a rustling behind us. I whipped around, but saw nothing. "Did you guys hear that?" I whispered. Jake and Mia nodded, their eyes wide. We quickened our pace, but the rustling followed, keeping pace with us. "We're not alone," Mia hissed. "Someone's following us." Panic surged through me. The man from the house. It had to be. We broke into a run, the rustling turning into the unmistakable sound of footsteps. I didn't dare look back. My heart was pounding, every shadow a potential threat. Finally, we burst out onto the main street, the comforting glow of streetlights and the sounds of Halloween around us. We didn't stop running until we reached Jake's house, slamming the door behind us and leaning against it, panting and wide-eyed. "Was it him? The guy from that house?" Mia asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know. I didn't see," I replied, my own voice shaky. We never found out who or what was following us that night, but one thing was certain: it was our last trick-or-treating adventure. Halloween was always the highlight of my childhood. Houses lined with pumpkins, costumes parading through the streets, and the sweet, unmistakable aroma of candy filling the air. That year, a new family had moved into the old Cooper residence at the end of our block. Their house was imposing, with towering trees and crawling ivy. The neighborhood kids were split on whether or not to visit the house during our candy collecting spree. My friends Jake, Lily, and I were more curious than afraid. We decided that it would be our last stop. As dusk settled in and our bags grew heavy with sweets, we approached the old Cooper residence. To our surprise, it was decked out in Halloween decor, more elaborate than any other house in the neighborhood. Cobwebs draped every corner, and lifelike mannequins in gory costumes adorned the lawn. A large banner hung over the entrance reading, "Trick or treat, if you dare." I was starting to feel uneasy, but Jake laughed it off, probably just trying to scare the younger kids away and save on candy costs. Taking a deep breath, we rang the doorbell. There was a long pause. Just as we were about to leave, the door creaked open, revealing a figure in a pristine porcelain mask. Their eyes, the only visible part of their face, studied us carefully. "Trick or treat," we mumbled, unease evident in our voices. Without a word, the masked figure placed a single beautifully wrapped chocolate in each of our bags. "Thank you," Lily said, trying to sound cheerful, but the figure only nodded in response. We hurriedly made our way down the path, eager to put distance between us and the house. "Well, that was anticlimactic," Jake said, unwrapping the chocolate. Without hesitation, he popped it into his mouth. A few houses down, Jake stopped in his tracks. "Guys, I don't feel so good," he murmured, clutching his stomach. Lily and I exchanged worried glances. "Let's just get you home," I suggested. But Jake's condition deteriorated rapidly. His face grew pale and he collapsed onto the sidewalk, convulsing. Panicking, Lily and I tried to get help, screaming for anyone nearby. A neighbor called an ambulance, and as we waited, I couldn't help but glance back at the old Cooper residence. The porch light was off, and the house stood dark and silent. Jake was rushed to the hospital, where they found an unknown toxin in his system. He spent weeks in recovery, and the local police launched an investigation. The old Cooper residence was still up for sale, meaning no one had actually moved in there, and the mysterious family had vanished by the next morning, leaving no trace behind. The remaining candies were tested, and all had traces of the same toxin. Thankfully, no other children had eaten them. Every Halloween, as children eagerly run from house to house, I'm reminded of that terrifying night. The porcelain masks, the eerily silent figure, and the unknown intentions behind that poisoned candy. It was a chilling lesson that sometimes the real monsters aren't supernatural. They walk among us, hiding behind masks, and sometimes curiosity can lead us to places best left unexplored. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the neighborhood transformed into a landscape of flickering jack-o'-lanterns and fluttering shadows. I was 12 and felt like I was too grown up for trick-or-treating, but my younger brother Timmy was a wide-eyed 7-year-old, cloaked in a superhero costume, eager for candy and adventures. "I'll take him, Mom," I had offered. Part of me still relished the Halloween atmosphere, the thrill, the chill in the air, the sense of something lurking just out of sight. As we set off, the street was alive with kids in costumes, their laughter echoing off the houses. The evening was crisp, the kind that tingled on your skin, and I found myself oddly alert, my senses heightened by the eerie glow of the decorations and the occasional shriek of fake terror. We had been going door to door for an hour, our bags heavy with treats, when we reached the end of the street. The houses here were spaced farther apart, their porch lights dimmer. I noticed a van parked at the curb, but thought nothing of it. At the last house, while Timmy rang the doorbell, I felt a sudden prickling on the back of my neck. I turned to see a figure emerging from the van. It was a man, dressed in a nondescript hoodie and jeans. Something about him set off alarm bells in my head. I grabbed Timmy's hand, but before we could retreat, the man was upon us. His smile was wide, too wide, and his eyes were like dark pits. "Hey there, superheroes," he said, his voice syrupy sweet. "You guys collecting candy? I've got a whole bunch in my van. Want to take a look?" Every instinct screamed at me to run, but Timmy, innocent and trusting, tugged at my hand. "Can we, please?" "No," I said, my voice trembling. "We need to go." The man's smile didn't waver, but his eyes hardened. "Oh, come on, I've got the best candy. Just a quick look." I felt his hand snake around my arm, his grip surprisingly strong. Panic surged through me. I tried to pull away, but he held firm. "Help!" I screamed, hoping someone would hear. In a blur, the door of the house we'd just visited flung open. A man, dressed as a vampire for the occasion, appeared on the doorstep. "Is everything okay here?" he asked, concern lacing his voice. The grip on my arm loosened as the man in the hoodie glanced nervously at the newcomer. "Just chatting," he said, attempting nonchalance. The vampire stepped closer, his gaze shifting from us to the man. "I think it's time for you to leave." There was an authority in his voice that I hadn't expected. The man in the hoodie hesitated, then released me and backed away. Without another word, he hurried to his van and drove off into the night. The vampire approached us, a kind smile replacing the concern. "Are you kids okay? Do you need me to call your parents?" Shaken, I nodded, unable to find my voice. As the man called our mom and explained the situation, I hugged Timmy close, my heart still pounding. That night, safe at home, I couldn't shake the chilling realization of what might have happened. Halloween, a night of pretend horrors, had shown me a real one. From then on, the flickering jack-o'-lanterns and fluttering shadows seemed a little less enchanting, a little more sinister, and I knew, as I held Timmy close, that I'd never let him out of my sight on Halloween again. Thanks for watching. If you haven't already, please like the video, comment what you thought, and subscribe for daily uploads.